Welcome, everybody. As Ashley mentioned, we're going to be talking about warehouse features in Dynamics GP as well as our solution, our PanatrackerGP inventory solution. So a little bit about our agenda. I'm going to talk first of all a little bit about our PanatrackerGP infrastructure. And also going to be talking about GP inventory features. Since we use GP as the host database, I think it's important to understand some of the key features that you're going to be able to utilize within your existing investment into GP. And then we're also going to filter in several demos of the actual PanatrackerGP application. We're going to be talking about receiving, some site transfers, and some order fulfillment. So first of all, a little bit about our infrastructure. So we use Dynamics as our host database. Operating over a wireless network, we use handheld computers or devices to capture transactions as the transactions are being completed. So at the point in the time that the transaction actually occurs. We do have a portal, which we call our dashboard, where you can manage configuration and transaction setup. We also have detailed transaction logging. So we do have a system status page that gives you information about our application, as well as a device setup page. And you can see here that we have all of the devices are set up automatically as we, and you can manage which versions that each of the devices have. So as you do upgrades, it's very easy to manage. We'll now talk a little bit about some of the inventory solutions themselves. So we offer multiple solutions across multiple industries. That's including stockroom inventory. We have inventory for broad projects and jobs, inventory for distribution, for manufacturing, and a central warehouse management solution. As you can see over to the right, we support multiple industries across all of our solutions as well. So a couple of the key features I want to be talking about with you today in our system, first of all, is the flexibility of configuration settings. We have lots of different settings that you can tailor the application to be used based on how you want to set up and how your business processes work. So a couple examples is you can specify which transactions are enabled for each user. You can assign batch code assignments to update or when transactions are created back into GP. You can control those batch code assignments. We can set site defaults, set bin defaults, as well as enable the unit of measure fields. We could also do such things as setting the ability to tailor. Do you want to allow over-receiving on a purchase order? Be able to require a reason code on adjustments or transfers. We also have what we call our flex fields. And flex fields are user-definable fields that you can set up to capture additional information. We also have native extensibility, so you can actually add logic and validation to those fields. All of our transactions have these available for you to set up, so you don't have to actually customize the application if you've got some business processes that are outside of just standard transactions that you want to capture. So here's an example of our receiving transaction. This has got the most, actually the most transactions, flex fields that we have. 2 on the transaction level. We have 2 additional on the unit level or the item level. 2 on, oops, sorry about that, my slides just kind of keep advancing ahead of me here. 2 on the item level, serial number, 2 on the lot tracked, and then we have 4 additional transaction levels that can be captured at the end of the transaction. So this is the most flex fields we currently have for a transaction, but as you can see, we can tailor and add additional data that you can name that field based on the information you're capturing, and we can also do some updates to other systems as well. We also have the ability to do pre- and post-stored procedures for any transaction. So again, some native extensibility without requiring somebody to be having to do that custom work for you as well. So if you've got additional information that you need to update, we can do that. Here's one example that we can provide for you. That example is basically somebody that's also tracking fixed assets, maybe doing a repair on that asset. And based on that repair, They might want to capture the parts and also update the fixed asset record. So this is an adjustment transaction on inventory where they can capture the items and the parts that they're taking out, the asset that they're applying that part to, and we can then do a post-stored procedure to update the asset record on the last maintenance date. So this is just one example of how that extensibility is available to you. We also have detailed transaction logging, which we can capture lots of information. We can also filter on the transaction logging, which is accessible through our dashboard or our portal. So that transaction logging adds the ability to capture the person that captured it, the actual device, and all the transaction details. And if for some reason the transaction doesn't successfully submit to GP, that data is not lost and the transaction doesn't have to be done again. That transaction stored in our logging database, once the issue is resolved, can be reapplied and resubmitted back to Dynamics. We also have detailed email notifications available so you can notify your users in the event of a specific issue that might happen, or it can be notified based on any business logic. For example, if somebody over-receives something on a purchase order and you want to notify the buyer right away, that can be completed with that email notification infrastructure. We have multiple data entry options, including barcode scanning and lookup lists. And our lookup lists also have the ability to see more information available for the users, including quantities, quantities that are on hand, on the receiving transaction, expected quantities as well. We also have extensive barcode control. That barcode control allows us for a single scan to parse the data into the proper fields without having to capture the additional details. This is native to our application as well. So if you do have GS1 or barcodes that have multiple pieces of data, we can set that up and be able to parse that data automatically for you. We also have our own native composite barcode called Panacode that basically does the same function, and that also is standard across all of our application as well. We also have automated barcode label printing support, and that's available on most transactions when you're adding inventory and also when you're moving or adjusting inventory as well. So we have the ability to set different settings for that. It can automatically print a label, or we can have it so the user can de-identify if they want a label and how many labels they want to print. We also support lot tracked inventory. So if you are lot tracking your inventory, we have the ability to handle all the lot tracking as well, including capturing expiration dates, manufacturing dates, as well as any of that, as well as any of the lot attributes that you might have set up. And you can set the sort order for your lot numbers also. It could be based on expire date, soonest to expire, least quantity. So a lot of, again, configuration options available for you. Next, I'm going to show you where we also have the ability to use the lot mask within GP. By using the lot mask, we have that ability for you within GP to set up how you want a lot to automatically be assigned. You can incorporate alpha, numerics, the dates, symbols, and lots of different things, and we can increment to the next number automatically for you at receiving, or when you use create production, or on the assembly transaction if you're creating those lot numbers yourself. We also have the ability to track lot numbers as basically a serial number, container number. We have several customers with this scenario where they might receive multiple of the same lot into a container that has some weight, or there's a length or some dimension that they need to track. And in order to track those individual dimensions, we can actually a lot of times set up with the lot number and the container ID. And that allows the ability to manage those containers and those weights in a nice, ideal way. So here's, and we actually then handle this very nicely. So for example, if this was a bin of something, bin of something that's got this lot number, you've got a container and it's got something that's being measured. Somebody's not going to want to measure it every time, but you'd want to know how much is left in that container without having to go through the measurements. And this is a good option to be able to set this up as well. Next, I'm going to talk about multiple bin support. So you want to consider multiple bin support if items are stocked in multiple locations throughout your warehouse or your quantity levels are difficult to manage due to site allocations. So basically, we're a lot of times trying to get many of our customers to migrate over to multiple bins. One of the options, if you have a specific location, only one specific location for an item, then a lot of times multiple bins aren't required. But most of our customers, a lot of times, will have that the same item in multiple spots. There's overstock areas, or I just don't have a lot of room, so I just put it where I have space. And then you want to be able to find exactly where is that item located. And adding that multiple bin support is a good way to do that. Also, if you're allocating orders, the allocations are done on your quantities on a site level, where the bin quantities are not affected until the order is actually fulfilled. So this adds a lot of flexibility to be able to know exactly what you have on hand down on that bin level. We also have different ways of setting up multiple bins within GP itself. So you can set default bins on a site level, such as purchase receipts, sales order fulfillment defaults, your assembly receipts, or material issues. And that can also be set on an actual item level as well. And then also on an item level, you can set up priority bins, and there's some validations and some additional logic we build in as well. So you can set not only just your priority bins, this is where I primarily want to stock this item, but you can also set minimum and maximum quantities when you set up your priority bins. So that then now goes down to supporting restocking levels and being able to add more warehouse management functionality within using your Dynamics database. So we have that feature on putaways. We have where we support multiple bins on order fulfillment and also on item bin moves. So we have the ability to set some defaults so we can actually give some guidance to the users on the order fulfillment pick list. We can add a logical pick path through the warehouse, and you guys have access to know where your inventory is from any of the transactions as well. We can auto-select all serials and lots in a bin, so some of our customers will use that to be able to easily, in a bin, I've got all these serial numbers, and maybe I have a temporary bin where I received everything into a bin for that item, and then instead of scanning each serial number to put it away, we can actually move the entire group as a unit to another bin location. So there's some additional extensibility for serials and lots that we've built in as well. And then we've extended multiple bin tracking even further by being able to add what kind of a bin that you're actually using. This is called our advanced bin management. And this allows us to identify if it's a stocking bin, is it an overstock bin, is it a staging bin? And we can apply different rules on different transactions based on the bin type. So that's, again, some extensibility that Panatrack has built out on the multiple bin setup. We also do support unit of measure. So if you've got items that are set up with different units of measure, we have that ability to set that up as well. So some tips that we like to give is set up the base unit of measure for your items based on the smallest unit that you're going to manage. So don't set up a case if you're going to go down to an each. Make your base unit of measure that each. And also set up the correct decimal place for proper conversions. So if you're measuring, have a measurement, for example, you might have some fraction numbers. You may want to then make sure your decimal places setup is associated. It's going to be set up properly as well. And don't set up a single master unit of measure schedule in Dynamics. What you want to really do is be able to look at your items and identify which items share the same unit of measure conversions, and then set up your unit of measure schedules accordingly and make those assignments accordingly. Those are all things that we work with our customers as we set them up with our system to be able to evaluate the current setup, as well as if you're new to setting up inventory, helping set up these up in the best practices. So basically how we work with unit of measure enabled is if transactions are created, we'll use, you can default the unit of measure and the base unit of measure will just be used on those transactions. If it's using it against receiving, we actually do conversions back to the purchase order. Same thing with the sales order. We'll make that conversion back to what the sales order unit of measure is. So that way we're handling that in the proper way for you. We also have a feature that we call our manufacturer item cross-reference, and basically what that is the ability to assign an item number from a manufacturer or vendor that's different from your GP item number, so you can use those barcodes when they come in. So that gives you the ability to make the associations. We can do that at receiving time as well. We have a feature that you can enable at that point. And then you have the ability then, when you scan that item number, we'll automatically translate it to your GP item number. So we can make those associations for you through our software as well. And we can also enable so that you have the ability, if you'd like, to set up the conversion to a unit of measure. This is another add-in that we've added to make further enhancements to the system. So if you've got an item number that's specific to a unit of measure, a lot of times in retail, you'll have this condition. We can actually make it so that when you scan that specific item number, we'll also not just make the translation, but we'll populate the corresponding unit of measure for the transaction for you. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump over to my handheld, and we'll go ahead and do a demo against a receiving transaction. So you can actually see this in action. So I'll be utilizing both the scanning capabilities as well as the lookups for you so you can demonstrate that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and scan my PO number. And as soon as I scan that PO number, it's going back to Dynamics. It's validating it's open and available to receive against. And now it's going to prompt me for the next piece of information. In this case, it's my vendor document number. This is an example of that flex field we talked about earlier in the presentation. So now I can go ahead and enter in my number, and now I can go ahead and automatically take into the item number. And I'll go ahead and use the item lookup list. Simply by tapping the corresponding button on the screen, I can go ahead and open up and see all the items on that purchase order and the current expected quantity. So that information is available to the user, and we'll keep that updated for the user as we complete the receiving transaction. So I'm going to go ahead and start selecting the first item on my list. And I'm using multiple bins, and as I've got my bin default set to go into the dock area. And now I can go ahead and enter in the quantity that I've received. Now I'm going to use my lookup list one more time for you so that you can now see that that item that I've received, because it's received 100% complete based on what I was expecting, is dropped to the bottom of my list. And now I have the next item that I can go ahead and receive against. Now I'm going to scan an item, and I can scan anything, even with that list open. That's the barcode scanner will work. And I'm going to actually scan 100 XLG for you. And when I do so, this is a serial tracked item, and so we're going to go ahead and be able to scan my serial numbers. So it's going to be able to record the serial numbers for us very efficiently as well. And once the serial numbers are all collected, I'm going to go ahead and scan my last item, which is going to be a lot tracked item. And then it's going to prompt me for my lot numbers. And again, we have the ability then to also enable the different attributes. So I have the manufacture date as well as the expiration date that I can go ahead and enter in as well. So I'm going to skip the manufacture date. I only care about the expiration date. And maybe it comes from the vendor, or maybe I'm just going to assign a year from today. So I'm going to go ahead and type in my expiration date. And we do also have the ability for you to set a format for the date entry, so the users don't have to put in slashes or dashes or worrying how to do that. And the lookup list for our dates is actually going to be, if I tap on the date, it brings me up a calendar. So that also allows me to go ahead and find and assign dates very easily. And we'll put a quantity of 100 for that lot tracked item. So we also have a review screen, and this is going to be standard on our transactions as well. So you can see when I come into my review screen, I can see the progress of my transaction. And we use some nice visual icons for you here as well. green check mark means this item has been received complete based on my expected quantity in GP for that purchase order line. And then I've got a partial receipt on my serial tracked and my lot tracked item. And I also have this filter to only show what I'm currently working on as far as what I've done so far. I can actually change my action. So I can actually see all items on the purchase order. If I prefer that view, I can do that. And I can also change that if I prefer to just say, well, I want to see only items that I haven't received at all. So I don't want to see everything. I just want to see any item that I have not completed the receipt against. So we have a lot of flexibility in the data that the information is being presented to the user that can be changed based on what makes the most sense for that user. Now I can go back and continue adding to this item or this transaction, or if I know I've completed this transaction, I can go back and I can submit the transaction. We always take the user back to a review screen so they can make sure everything is correct, and then that submit's going to automatically submit that transaction back to Dynamics. So that's just a good example of the receiving transaction for you. And next, we're going to then talk a little bit about different workflow options for receiving. So we have the ability to, a lot of our customers will check in at a receiving area like I did, print their barcode labels, and then as a second step, they'll do a put away. You might also just do a direct put away, especially if you're bringing something in from a fork truck. Just take it and move it right away to the put away location. So that's an option as well. So again, we offer many different workflow options that we can review with our customers to identify ways and best practices of how to set that up for them. So we also have the ability to give you a directed put away, and that directed put away, if I receive everything in my dock area, the next step is I'm going to actually go ahead and I'm going to put the items to their destination or their default locations, or wherever I have room, whichever way the workflows that somebody has. That directed put away does require multiple bins, and we can give the recommendation of what bin that the inventory should go to based on a setting, and that can be based on your priority bin setup, or it can be based on a sales order fulfillment default bin setup for the item. So again, a lot of different options and workflows available. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about transfers. And transfers are basically the ability to move inventory from one site location to the other. And so basically, I'm going to go back to our site transfers. So this is just a basic, I'm going to go out and I'm going to start grabbing inventory to be able to transfer. So I'm in the site warehouse, and you noticed when I first opened up that screen that it was automatically defaulted for me. So again, that's an example of a configuration setting. And so what bin am I going to go ahead and receive this into, or I'm going to send this into the north to start out with. And now I can scan my items, what bin I've got that item in. I'm going to cheat a little bit and look at and see all the bin locations where I know I can find that inventory. And then I can go ahead and enter in my quantities. So this provides the ability for us to simply create a nice simple site transfer, moving it from one location to another location. Now, the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is we also have the ability to do what we call our directed transfer. And this is some additional infrastructure that we built in. And basically, our directed transfer is an internal order to say, hey, I want to transfer stuff from one location to the other. Some customers that we've dealt with have used sales orders for this function. We actually have an infrastructure that we've built out. And we can support both site transfers as well as bin-to-bin moves. So if you don't have multiple sites, but you do have multiple bins, we can do it within the same site location as well. So we have an entry form that somebody can go ahead and enter in their order, and then we also have the ability to add an approval level to those orders as well. So as I mentioned, it could be between two sites. We also support a via site, or an in-transit site, which means you can have a two-step process where you're picking the transfer to go to one site. It goes into a temporary or in-transit type of a site while it's on its way. And when it gets to the destination location, they will do a second transfer to take it out of the via or in-transit site into their own site location. So this is just another workflow option to demonstrate the different site to site that's direct. I'm going to just send it directly to the truck or to a different warehouse. And then this is one that's the via site. So then there's a two-step transfer there. And then we also have that bin move. The nice thing with our directed transfer is we do have the ability for you then to do a directed pick. So we're going to be demonstrating the order fulfillment on a sales order, but we have the same thing for when somebody needs to pick the order internally to do that transfer. So when we get to that point, think of that as well, because it basically uses the same workflow and the same logic. From the device, we can also create that directed transfer. So we can do a count against min and max settings, as well as the user can simply make an entry to say, hey, I'm requesting this item for this quantity. And we also have a Kanban option. So again, we have a lot of different features there for you as well. So the next topic I want to talk briefly on is stock counts. We do have the support for the GP stock count as well as the Blue Moon quality count. And one of the advantages we have, not only the streamlining of counting on the handheld, but we also have the ability to log the transactions for you automatically. And that way it gives you an audit history of all how the count was actually captured. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the order fulfillment pick and pack process. We do require that you have a separate fulfillment process set up on your sales order function. So that allows us to complete the picking and identifying what items were picked on the order at the time that the user is actually picking them. So I'm going to actually be demonstrating an order fulfillment, and we're also going to be doing a verification for that order. And we're going to go into our orders, fulfill order. So you can see I've got my directed transfers in here as well. So as I mentioned, whether you're picking an order for a site transfer, an internal site transfer, or for a customer sales order that you're shipping out, the functionality basically is the same. So I'm going to go ahead and scan my order number. And then it's going to pop up the items on my list. And so you can see I've got, these are set up in a bin order. So I'm going to be going to A1002, then A1005, and then C-1001. So this is an option that you can set as how do you want that pick list presented to the user, because then we're going to give them that nice path through the warehouse. So usually the bin default is usually the best option. We can also add logic that if that bin is empty, I'm going to be then prompted to go to the next bin where that item has available quantity. So we have a lot of logic built in so the users aren't running around all over the warehouse. They can have a nice consistent pick pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and go into my first item. I'm going to scan to verify that this is the bin I'm picking it from. I'm going to scan to verify and confirm this is the item I'm actually picking, and I'm going to enter in my count. And now it's just going to automatically take me to the next item on my pick list. So I don't even have to return back to that pick list in order to continue on. It's just going to keep me right here and make it nice and simple for me to just go to the next item. I can go back to that pick list if I want. And again, very similar to what you saw in receiving, we have some nice visual icons for you. Green check mark, again, everything's been picked complete, and it drops to the bottom of the list. Items I still need to pick are at the top. So this is where we're going to come back to submit this back to Dynamics. But as you can see, the users are going to be able to just very quickly, with a very simple visual cues, see the status of that pick before they submit it. And we'll go back in and finish our pickoff. And then once we're all done, it's automatically going to take me back to my pick list where I can go ahead and submit my pick back to Dynamics. And that's going to update the order fulfillment transaction for us back into Dynamics. And it's going to also update the batch ID. So the batch ID we can also set up and use basically on the status, and also great for the accounting department or the finance department, because now everything's in a batch for invoicing that they can do, then streamline their invoicing process also. We also have the ability on any of our functions to be able to pack or pick into a specific box ID or container ID, or onto a pallet ID. So this allows us to provide the ability to identify on a packing list what's packed in each box, and it also gets passed on to a shipping solution that you're using, or to an EDI solution. So if you need to do EDI, we provide the pack details that gets used downstream. So I didn't have that set up on that specific transaction for order picking, because I'm going to actually do a second transaction, which is I'm going to take that same order and I'm going to actually verify it. And so the verification is an optional second step. What you're going to see here, you can also enable if you'd like some of the features on the fulfill. If you want to do a single step process, you can. So I'm going to go now, everything's been picked, it's in my staging area to pack up, so I'm going to scan that same order number. And when I scan that order number, then scan the item, scan the order number. You see we got the validation there too. It's going to ask me what box do I want to put this in. So now I can go ahead and assign that box and start scanning my items. And what you're seeing here is I've got this set up as a configuration setting again. Instead of entering in a quantity, I'm just being prompted to say to scan the item. So if I've got a lot of items with all barcodes, I can pick and choose. I don't have to go ahead and enter in a quantity. I can just scan each item as I'm packing it into a box. We can turn that off and have the user actually enter in a quantity. And we also have a quantity threshold. So we can actually set it to say if the quantity I need to verify is greater than 12, then go ahead and let the user enter in a quantity. We'll prompt for the quantity. Otherwise, we're just going to automatically record each scan. So that again is a configuration option. Now maybe I'm done with that box, and now I'm going to go on to the next box. So I did a close box option, and now I can scan my next item and pick my next box that I'm scanning into. So again, we have different configurations to have for different workflows here. If you've got 10 boxes setting up in front of me, and I'm just going to decide as I'm packing which box to go into. So I want to scan the item in the box. For each item, I can do that as well. So again, multiple configuration options. We also have a review screen here, so I can see exactly what I've done so far. And I can come back, and from the item lookup list, again, I also can identify what quantities that I have left. I haven't scanned everything completely yet, so again, I can just go ahead and do my scanning. And then we also can identify if somebody scanned too many things. So if I've got to the point where I've scanned more than what I'm supposed to, for example, I just did, that means somebody, when they picked it, picked one too many, or I made a mistake when I was here. So again, we basically don't allow somebody to make that mistake. So I can see that I've already got two. I can take another quick look and confirm, do I really have that third one, or did I just scan the same item twice, or did the guy that did the picking grab an extra one at that point in time, and I can catch it before we ship it out. So once everything's completed here, I can go ahead and then submit that order. So that shipping box, feature is available to enable on that first process on the order fulfill screen as well. And again, we have a lot of different workflow options. I won't go through each of these at this point in time, but as you can see, order, pick, and pack, there are a lot of different configurations and ways that we can set this up. And we've seen a lot of these different ways, so we're really good at defining the process that would work best for each of our customers as well. We also have a optional pick and pack that gives us some different back-end stuff as well. We also can print packing lists and container labels. So if that's something that you need to do, that can be automated as well. So the next feature I'm going to talk about on a very high level is manufacturing. We do support GP manufacturing as well as vicinity, as well as horizon. And we also do support the inventory assembly transaction. So if you're a manufacturer and you want to use create production or record the receiving of a manufacturing order, we can do that. We can also issue the components. So again, there's a lot of functionality around the manufacturing that we support as well. And for the assembly transaction, we also have created an assembly work order. So we can actually manage the work orders that you want to be able to go ahead and say, I want to plan, I'm going to build X amount of this item, kind of like you have for GP manufacturing. So a lot of people don't need the overhead of a whole manufacturing system, but they want a little bit more where they can manage what and plan their assemblies or their manufacturing processes. So we built out an assembly work order function. And the assembly can be done from the handheld, and we do support back flushing for assembly. So in other words, if I'm building a chair, I know a chair is always going to have 4 legs and 2 arms and a back and a seat. I don't need to have each of those selected independently. If I build 10 chairs, I know that the calculation for each of those should be on each of those components automatically calculated and completed as part of the components. So we can support selection independently as well as picking each of doing that backflush function. And I'll check on how I'm doing on time. It looks like we're doing pretty good. I want to make sure we have plenty of times for questions as well. We've kind of started out with the bundled inventory transactions we do support is stockroom inventory. We support GP projects as well as key to act jobs and service in our inventory for projects and jobs. Inventory for distribution, that adds that order fulfillment, the order pick and pack functionality. Inventory for manufacturing. And then the central warehouse management is central around our directed transfer that I touched bases with earlier in the presentation as well. So we have a lot of different solutions, and we also have some add-on modules. So we do have a sales order entry. So if somebody needs to create a new order from the handhelds, they can do that. Or if they need to edit an order from the handhelds, they can do that as well. So we have support for advanced ship notices for the receiving side. So there are a lot of other features and functionality outside of just the bundled functionality in each of these solutions as well. And also, each of these solutions have different levels. We can start with the basics, what we call our essentials. We have more of a standard. This is kind of typically what we see. And then we also offer advanced modules and bundles as well to add some additional functionality if you need it. So our solutions are very scalable. You can start with some of the essentials or the very basics. And then as your business grows or as you want to be able to add in more logic and functionality, you can always upgrade as you go as well. I want to thank you so much for your time today, and I apologize, my PowerPoint presentation I think was on autopilot there by accident, so I thank you for your patience for that. But I would like to entertain any questions, and also if you do have any interest in finding out more information or would like to schedule a demo or discovery call with our sales group, you can contact us at sales@panatrack.com. But I will have Ashley then open it up for any questions that anybody the audience might have at this time.
Great, thanks, Pam. Yeah, we actually got a couple questions. The first one is, does your product work with OneSoft Key to Act job cost, moving items from inventory into jobs?
It does. So we do have the Key to Act integration, and the Key to Act integration is in a couple different places. So one of the spots is going to be on adjustments. So if you're taking stuff out on an adjustment, it adds a couple additional fields so that you can capture the job or the service that you're going to be, that's integrated with OneSoft. So it's got the lookups and stuff the same we do with GP. And then it updates that the job and service data that's captured as part of that. We also have it on receiving. So if, for example, you have stuff that's coming in specific for a job or a service activity on the purchase order, that data is going to flow through automatically to that receiving transaction as well. And many of our customers will also add to their label printing design for the labels that job or that service, so it's actually on the label. So we're actually have some development initiatives to do some additional tracking for inventory that's been received specifically for projects or the key to act job and service, to track it, even some additional tracking coming up. And I can, if you are interested in some of those additional details, I can, if you contact our sales department, we can talk with you on what's coming up there.
Great, and the next question that we got is, how do you route orders to different users/devices?
Okay, that's a good question. So there's a couple different options. So for some of our customers, they'll identify orders based on a batch ID management. So on the sales order itself, there is a batch ID. So if you want to identify groups of orders for those different users that way, it can be done. Otherwise, in most cases, I'd say probably about 80% of the cases, because even though everybody wants to go paperless, if you're picking items and you're putting them into a shipping area or a staging area, walking away from that inventory at a given point in time, you still need something that's physically going to identify that this inventory or these items were picked for this order. So most of the time, people will still print some type of a traveler that's got the order number, and a lot of times it's just the picking list out of GP, so they can barcode that, scan it, and they manage the order distribution based on that. So they're handing those orders out in that way. We do have what we call in our portal, what we call an order sorter. It is in final development stages right now, but it provides a dashboard of all the open sales orders where you can then basically assign the orders to a user. And that, again, isn't released yet, but will be coming out soon.
Thank you. And the last question that we've gotten is wondering if you've worked with Cogsdale customers. If so, do you work with Cogsdale projects and GP projects?
We work with GP projects. Yes, we have worked. We've got several customers with Cogsdale, and actually Cogsdale was one of our partners that came to one of our. We had a partner training session to give them more in-depth knowledge of our solution, and they did send somebody to that on our side. But we do have also for a nice support for projects, and I'll just bring my handheld over here so you can just kind of see what that looks like. And it's project transfers as well as project transfer returns. And we also support a really cool thing, and again, if you're interested, this has got a lot of flex fields enabled, but one of the really cool things that we do have for our projects is we've actually have had a customer that built out the site transfers or the project transfer and made a modification in GP to use that as kind of a work order. And we also support that as well. And if you want some more information on how that setup works, I can show you that as well. But it was kind of a cool idea, and we do promote that idea to a lot of our project customers. So hopefully that answers your questions. If you want to find out more about that, certainly give us a call as well.
And we had another question come in. Is there an admin piece to Panatracker? Is that the dashboard?
Yes, the admin piece is the dashboard, and I'll be happy to bring that up to show you as well. Just give me one sec here, and I will bring it up, and I'll give you just a real short tour since it looks like we still have a little bit of time left here. So yes, this is our administration. So we do, I think I had a couple screenshots at the start, but we went through it quite quickly. And this is where you'd have somebody log in. And all the users and stuff are set up here for logins and privileges as well. And so all of your configuration settings are identified here. Most of these are on a profile, which can be a user level. So you can have different settings for different users or groups of users. We also have where all of our transactions are logged. So as I mentioned before, we have the detailed logging as well. And so you can see we've got some in-progress transactions. It does give time and date stamps. The logs are in a SQL database. So many of our customers have built some nice reports around this, and we've helped them build some nice reports as well. So if you want some additional reporting, you can. And then we also track all the actual details of what was captured as well. So this is really a full audit history here for you. And I think I might have that order sorter up in here too. Might not be licensed for that in here. Let's see, portal entries. Oh, you have sales order sorter. So you can at least kind of see what it looks like. So you can see there's a dashboard, and then we have the ability to see if somebody wants to drill down to see what the items on any particular order, and then the drag and drop. And this is using a user-defined field on the sales order to identify your actual pickers or your delivery people. So again, that gives ability to, this isn't 100% completed yet, but almost done. That gives you that ability to do that as well. And then one more feature I'll show you very quickly here is for that advanced bin management. So for customers that do decide that they'd like to have that advanced bin management, they can do that. And we have a lot of filtering as well. So I can actually filter on, let's just look up for sites for bins for my site warehouse. And then you can see that we can actually assign different bin types. And then we can actually extend this out. So if you actually have a nice inquiry without going into GP, if you wanted to go into any specific bin location and see what current quantities and items you have in that bin, you can do that as well. So a lot of features in our dashboard and in our configurations here. And finally, this is also where we can enter orders. You can actually see your advanced ship notice orders, transactions if you're using our advanced ship notice feature, or our transfer order if you want to create a new internal order for transferring between locations is available here for you to see as well. And then we've got all of the line items and statuses that we have in that case. So somebody can create orders from here as well as from the handheld.
Awesome. And a couple more questions have been trickling in. Can this product be used to do fixed asset inventory?
Yes, we do have a fixed assets module as well. This was an inventory webinar, but we do also have fixed assets. So I'm glad that the question was asked. So the fixed assets, we have two versions of our fixed assets. We have one if you don't have continual wireless communication. We can synchronize assets down to the handheld, so if you have to go out to different job sites or areas there, we can do so. Otherwise, we also have our connected assets, which works the same as our inventory on wireless, that you don't have to require any synchronization. And you can add new assets, you can update assets, and you can do a validation. And the validation is scanning each asset to confirm the assets in the location that it's supposed to be in according to Dynamics. And we use the Dynamics GP fixed asset module for this particular solution as well.
Thanks, Pam. And the final question we have is, during receiving with Cogsdale, do you work with equipment receiving to create equipment records at time of receipt?
We don't have anything natively that has that infrastructure. However, without having us to make any changes, one of the things I would suggest, if that's something that you'd like to do, is we've got a nice infrastructure that I think I talked about very briefly at the very start. For every transaction, let's go into my transaction setup. You can add a flex field. So if there's data in that area that you wanted to be able to capture specific for a piece of equipment, or if it's on the purchase order, we can actually capture that or have the flex fields. And then for every transaction, we have a pre and post procedure. So I would say is you write a rule or a stored procedure to say when my receiving transaction goes into GP, then automatically go to the Cogsdale Equipment Manager and update that as well with this information. So we don't have to do a lot of customizations for some of those other integration points, because we have that infrastructure already built in our system to be able to add them, and then you can customize them based on your requirements.
Thank you. And it looks like that is it for questions at this time. If people on the line still have more questions that they'd like us to follow up with, I'll be sending out a link to the recording via email this afternoon, so you can always follow up with us from that email. Or like Pam mentioned, you can contact Panatrack directly at sales@panatrack.com.
Great. Thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you everyone for attending.
Yeah, thank you so much, Pam. Have a great day.
Thank you.